It's Black History Month in America. I am Anthony Amp Elmore, President and founder of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. We at the Proud Black Buddhist World Association practice the Buddhist teachings as taught by the 13th century Japanese Buddhist sage Nichiren. The word Nichiren means sun lotus, and we call him Nichiren Shonin. Shonin means priest. Now, the way that we learn the teachings of Nichiren Shonin is through the Gosho. The Gosho are letters that Nichiren wrote to his disciples that teaches us Buddhism. He wrote these letters and he taught his disciples Buddhism. That's how he administered his doctrine. Now, what Nichiren taught was he taught that the highest teachings of the Buddha Shakyamuni was that of the Lotus Sutra. Now, we who are members of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association practice the Lotus Sutra as the absolute teachings of us and the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. We have a very exciting lecture for you today. Our lecture today is called Rosa Parks, the mother of the Civil Rights Movement, became a Buddhist before she died in 2005. Now, let's get into it. Now, in Nichiren's time and in today's time, people just do not understand or practice the Lotus Sutra. Now, the title of the Lotus Sutra is the phrase Myoho Renge Kyo, which is the essence of the Lotus Sutra is in the title. Now, as I told you, we learn Buddhism by studying the Gosho. Now, in the Gosho of Nichiren Shonin, there's a Gosho called the Gift of Rice. And I quote this Gosho very often, and where Nichiren writes, quote, he says, the true path lies in the affairs of this world. The Golden Light Sutra states, quote, to have a profound knowledge of this world is itself Buddhism. He goes on further. The Nirvana Sutra states, quote, all of the non-Buddhist scriptures and writings in society are themselves Buddhist teachings and not non-Buddhist teachings, unquote. He goes on further. When the great teacher Mahayana compared these passages with one from the 6th volume of the Lotus Sutra that reads, quote, no worldly affairs of life or work are ever contrary to the true reality, unquote. He goes on further. He revealed their meanings and pointed out that although the first two sutras are profound, since their meaning is still shallow and fails to approach that of the Lotus Sutra. He goes on further. They relate to secular matters in terms of Buddhism, whereas the Lotus Sutra explains that in the end, secular matters are the entirety of Buddhism. You see, it's Black History Month in America, and Nichiren writes, quote, they relate to secular matters in terms of Buddhism, whereas the Lotus Sutra explains that in the end, secular matters are the entirety of Buddhism. See, many people confuse Buddhism with an Asian monk with a bald head and a robe. Many see someone meditating and they call this Buddhism. This is not so based on the Lotus Sutra. See, the Lotus Sutra teaches us that it is secular matters that is the entirety of Buddhism. See, Buddhism, or Kyo, means all of the teachings in the universe, which includes science, the sciences of archaeology, anthropology, literary science, all the science and all the doctrines in the world, and life and living is actually the Lotus Sutra. It is not just limited to some Asians or some Asian monks. So when you see people sitting up meditating or somebody with a Buddhist robe on, that may be Buddhism, but that is not the Lotus Sutra, or it is not the highest teachings of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Now, it is Black History Month, and based on the Lotus Sutra, celebrating Black History Month is Buddhism. Now, let me give you an explanation of two types of Buddhism. And you got Buddhism with the Lotus Sutra, and you got Buddhism without the Lotus Sutra. See, Buddhism without the Lotus Sutra, that's Buddhist teachings. But Buddhism with the Lotus Sutra includes secular matters. See, in the history of Buddhism, just over 150 years into the AD, Buddhism became separated by race, language, and culture. See, a new Buddhism emerged called Mahayana Buddhism that was started by a white king by the name of Kanishka. Now, please understand that ancient India was all black. In fact, during the time of Homer, India was known as Eastern Ethiopia. Now, around 150 AD, a Kushan king, that is a white king, he conquered India. He come from the land around what we call Afghanistan, and he was a Kushan king. Now imagine you got a white king that conquered all of these black people who were formerly Buddhists. Well, what happened was, there was a Brahmin by the name of Ashvaghosha. This Brahmin introduced this white king into Buddhism. And so they came up with the new Buddhism. Together they came up with what is called their own Fourth Buddhist Council. And they got together and they came up with a whole new language of Buddhism called Sanskrit. So they went from the black language of Prakrit that people spoke, and they went with this artificial language that was only spoken by the high-class Brahmins called Sanskrit, and they converted the Buddhist teachings into Sanskrit. Now, what you would learn about King Kanishka was he was the guy who built the Gahara art. What happened was he changed the Buddhists to look like Hellenists or Greco-Roman figures, and this is the time in history where Buddhism went from black to white. Now, because of this Kushan king, he was able to spread Buddhism throughout Asia. So when the Mahayana Buddhism went throughout Asia and it made it to Japan, now we move into 13th century Japan, and we come to the person who we call the messenger of the Buddha, or who is Bodhisattva superior practices, who we call Nichiren Shonin. Nichiren Shonin teaches us in the Go-Sho that Shakyamuni Buddha rejected both Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism, and he taught that the only correct teachings of Buddhism is the Lotus Sutra. Now, what you have in Buddhism is that you have people in Japan who practice the Mahayana Buddhist teachings. The Mahayana Buddhist teachings extricate all black culture, history, and language from Buddhism. Now, the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu, they all practice Mahayana Buddhism that rejects black culture and history. Now, the SGI is one of the most richest religious organizations in the world. They own a multi-billion-dollar media empire, owning one of the largest newspapers, not only in Japan, but one of the largest newspapers in the world. The SGI printing empire is worth multi-billions. Now, in regards to black people and black history and culture, the SGI rarely write about any story that is inclusive of black history and culture. The only way they're going to write about it is they're going to write about it to make their leader Daisaki Keita, to prop him up. For example, they'll do a Martin King Keita photo exhibit, but they don't do anything outside of propping their leader, making him a demigod. Now, what is tragic is one of the most iconic figures in American history is the story of Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks is the mother of the civil rights movement in America. What is so fascinating about Rosa Parks is that before she died, she became a Buddhist. Now, what is tragic is the fact that you got thousands of African Americans practicing Buddhism, and hardly anyone knew that Rosa Parks, the mother of civil rights, became a Buddhist before she died in 2005. Now, our Buddhist lecture is Rosa Parks became a Buddhist before she died. Now, let us watch a video about Rosa Parks, and we're going to come back and put a period on this lecture. Let's first of all teach you, everybody should know, but just in case you don't know about Rosa Parks, if you're in another part of the world, she was the person of the mother of the civil rights movement. Let's watch a video on Rosa Parks and come back and put a period on this lecture.
Born the eldest of two children in 1913, Rosa Louise McCauley was raised on her grandparents' farm in Pine Level, Alabama. As a child, Rosa was exposed to the realities of segregation. She walked to school daily because the elementary school bus system prohibited black students from riding. Rosa later attended the Alabama State Teachers College High School. However, due to both her grandmother and mother's illnesses, she was forced to drop out. At 19, Rosa met Raymond Parks, who worked with Montgomery's NAACP chapter. After their marriage in 1932 and much encouragement, she earned her high school diploma. Rosa joined Raymond in the NAACP, serving as the chapter's secretary and youth leader.
History is peculiar. It places gifted and talented women and men in situations where they must make a choice. The choice she made was on the afternoon of the 1st of December, 1955, on a bus as she was going home from her seamstress job in a department store in Montgomery, Alabama.
Rosa, along with 3 other black passengers, were told to give up their seats to a white male passenger. She refused and was arrested. An all-day bus boycott was organized on the day of Rosa's trial, December 5, 1955, where she was fined $14 and found guilty.
She was a role model for courage in the face of racial injustice. Rosa Parks, through her quiet eloquence, through her commitment both to her faith and to the cause of civil rights and racial equality, was prepared to sacrifice everything, her security, even her life, to fight for what was right, at least her perception of what was justice.
Thousands of people walked, carpooled, and took cabs to work. The boycott lasted 381 days, with the 26-year-old Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. as their leader. Rosa was not the first person to refuse to give up her seat. 2 other women were previously arrested for the same offense. However, it was this quiet 42-year-old who became the face of the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1956, groundbreaking history was made.
The Supreme Court decision by a 9-0 vote supported the civil rights position calling for an end to racial segregation on municipal buses.
Unable to find work, largely due to her political stance, the Parks moved north to Detroit, Michigan, and by 1965, Rosa began to work for Congressman John Conyers until 1988 when she retired. In memory of her husband and in her vision for a better tomorrow, Rosa co-founded the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development, which educates young people on the civil rights movement, gives freedom bus tours, and provides youth with professional guidance. Rosa also worked giving lectures and advocating for social justice. Rosa Parks passed away on October 24, 2005. She was the first woman and second African American to lie in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Rosa received over 24 honorary doctrines and numerous national and international awards, among them the Medal of Freedom from President Clinton and the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. Rosa was a grassroots activist for social justice and peace, through her efforts in the civil rights movement to her participation in the anti-apartheid movement for South Africa. Although she never planned on getting arrested, her simple action changed the course of a nation.
I think Mrs. Parks unexpectedly had greatness thrust upon her. I think she was born for it, and I do think she achieved it. You see what I mean? But had she not, of that particular day, said, "I'm not moving, my feet hurt," we would have a different nation and a different world.
If you Google Rosa Parks and Buddhism, you will find that that before she died, she became a Buddhist, and this information is in Buddhist circles. It is clear that a multi-billion-dollar operation like the SGI, notice this, the SGI is a media conglomerate. They are larger, they have more wealth than CNN News, ABC, CBS, and NBC all put together. They have more money than all these guys put together. Their media empire is much larger than what? CNN News, NBC, ABC, and CBS, and yet these people are so rotten, so low down, so despicable that they would not even mention the fact that Rosa Parks became a Buddhist before she died. Now, in the words of the hood, let us say thank God for the proud Black Buddhist World Association, who can tell black folk about their Black Buddhist history. The writer of the official Rosa Parks autobiography was a famous author by the name of Douglas Brinkley. Now, while on NBC during Black History Month, that's February the 5th, 2013, Douglas Brinkley reiterated the fact that Rosa Parks became Buddhist before she died. Douglas Brinkley shared this story, and the world knows that Rosa Parks became a Buddhist before she died. Douglas Brinkley is a very famous author who wrote a book about Reagan and John Kerry. He's a professor. He's Dr. Douglas Brinkley. He was very close to Rosa Parks. He told the story, and he let us know about Rosa Parks, that she became Buddhist. He goes into detail about this. Now, let us conclude this Black Buddhist history lecture. Rosa Parks became a Buddhist before she died. Those of you who were born or who joined the Buddhist faith, let me put it this way here. Let me leave with a quote. And it goes like this. It says, and this is something that came out of my heart, there are those who join Buddhism and Buddhism changes them. And there are those who join Buddhism and they change Buddhism. That person was Rosa Parks, who we at the Proud Black Buddhists call a Bodhisattva of the earth. We too are the Bodhisattvas of the earth. I am Anthony Amp Elmore, President and founder of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association, bringing you the information and Black History note that Rosa Parks became a Buddhist before she died. Fighting in the world for freedom, justice, and equality, we're the Matsuni. We're called the Proud Black Buddhists. We're going to put you guys on alert in the 15th chapter of Lotus Sutra, we're the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Them giant suckers who trying to knock us. We are the Black Bodhisattvas. Dr. King, Malcolm X, and Nelson Mandela. The Black Bodhisattvas, the one that was stubborn and come from India. His name was Secretary Him in Mecca. The old name for India to Eastern Ethiopia. From the land of India called Eastern Ethiopia, a great man called Shakyamuni Buddha. His great teacher called the Lotus Sutra. Coming to you, the Lotus Sutra. Coming to you, the Lotus Sutra. Coming to you, the Lotus Sutra. Coming to you.